Go live. Okay, I think we are live with my dear friend Julia Bushkova. I see the chat here. Hello, everyone. Good evening for the night owls, and I guess it's probably morning somewhere. Someone just said good morning.
Yeah. India and anywhere in.
That's right. Welcome to our friends from India. Would someone please write in the chat if the stream is not working or if the volumes are bad or anything like that, and I will do my best. Okay. Someone said you are not live. I'm pretty sure we're live.
Hmm.
Good evening. Are we live? Can somebody please? This is my first time streaming on YouTube. Take it easy on me. Okay, it says we have a bunch of it's working, everything is good. All right, excellent. We will proceed. Welcome, everyone. My name is Daniel Kurganov. This is the first time I'm streaming live. I'm usually posting videos about violin technique that some of you may have seen before. As I said, I'm with Julia Bushkova, who is a fantastic pedagogue and violinist. She's based in Texas and teaches at UNT. And she has an excellent YouTube channel as well. It's called Violin Class, I believe. And I encourage all of you to go there, look at her videos. She works with her students there, and do subscribe to that channel and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. This is a little experiment. I hope to do more live streams here. And thank you, Julia, for joining me. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me. We actually both had this idea. I had this idea too, but you beat me to it.
You know, it's very easy to have ideas, and something I've learned is that it's the real thing is to act on them and actually put them into. So that's something I'm always struggling with, and I saw the chance to be like, hey, Julia, let's do this. And I'm just happy that the timings worked out here. We have a lot of activity in the chat. Good to hear you all, to see you all. Andrew and Bean and violin class. Oh, are you typing? That's your surrogate.
Yes, that's my
Yes, good. I thought I'd start with a question that I noticed in the chat here about transitioning to becoming your own teacher. And this is a question from, and I'll go back to the previous questions as well. Bluebird64. I won't be able to make the live video. I did have a question. How do you transition to becoming your own teacher after graduating and no longer taking lessons? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I kind of started doing it myself while I was still at school. It just happened that way because accidentally I had a son. My son was born, and then I didn't play for a year back then. I was very young. And then when I was coming into playing, I had to first get into shape, to resume classes. I took a year off completely of conservatory. And that's when I realized that, yeah, I had to, basically, I had a lot of knowledge, like everybody does. If they studied for X number of years, they already have a lots of knowledge there, but it has to be retrieved.
Mm.
So I started, I did, none of that was conscious on my part, but later I realized how much I moved along that path. So when I finally was after conservatory and done with lessons, I knew what to do. Exactly. So the main thing is that you can't rely on the teacher because
Yeah.
there isn't teacher next to you. That's the first thing. Secondly, realizing that there are always shortcuts,
Mm.
good shortcuts, not like, well, I cheat somewhere, but shortcuts here, or like I call it now, open your mind. But back then I had no idea. For instance, yeah, so remembering, number one, remembering whatever I knew in lessons. Well, listening to yourself, then listening became much more important, actually. And back then there were no devices to record yourself, so you had just you know
Right.
listen, as this thing was nearby
Yeah.
in my hand. So I also, another thing, I also was very pressed on time because I would just get like 40 minutes a day because with all my duties at home with the baby and everything, it was so little. And so focus was there, questions were there. And then I started using visualization without knowing that it was visualization.
Well, sounds like a big part of that is also out of
Oh,
necessity having to be.
somebody is showing this on the screen. What was that?
Oh no, I think that's a Zoom artifact. Don't worry about that. um, yeah, I think another part of that is out of necessity having to become more efficient with practicing. That you don't have as much time anymore. It's not an all-day practice fest. You have a family to take care of, etc. And um, I don't know. In my experience, that when I entered that stage, I don't have children myself, but there came a time when I just couldn't practice as much as I wanted to anymore. I dream about having a whole day to practice now, and it's kind of a fun thing when I get to do that. But you talked about listening. I think I really learned to listen once I stopped having the luxury of, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that simple, but I think that was a direct link for me personally. And yeah, I don't know. How does one learn to listen better? What do you think stops people from really hearing what's
I
happening
think,
while it's happening? Because I think
yeah.
after listening to your own self on recordings, you can be like, oh, that's terrible. That's out of tune. You can hear quite a bit, but something happens when we're playing where perceptions are just altered.
I, yeah, I think there are two tiers to this. The first tier is when we're young players, and young players you can be any age, but not professional yet. Um, so that I call, well, by now I graduated to call it turn off the CD in your brain.
Hmm.
It's called tape recorder. Now CD, and even that now MP3, I guess has to be now or something. People don't know probably what CDs are. So, in any case, I think it's a protective mechanism when we are starting, and we all sound very poor, especially on this instrument, and we are not as in tune, and maybe we don't discern yet, and sound is not as good, and like things are really pretty bad. And in order to keep us interested,
Hmm.
you know, it automatically, like you hear that overall nicer sound, and then you get to listen, and the teacher says, "Oh yeah, that's good," and so you think, "Okay, so that's what I hear now. It's good. It's probably like this. It's
Hmm.
probably like on that recording." You know what I mean? Not consciously necessarily, but just like good sound
Yeah.
or good intonation. And then the time comes, and with my students, I work on that a lot. Again, especially when somebody comes in and they think they sound okay, and they really sound pretty bad, or they think they sound great and they're at best mediocre. So I start working on on that thing, to get
Is
them to
anyone
hear
listening from Julia's class?
themselves. So
Well, they sound
yeah.
better now, I'm sure. Sorry, you were
Well,
saying.
no, 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 but it's true. And so then that is the first tier, though. It's a
Yeah.
first tier of not listening. It's when you finally start hearing yourself, like your actual sound, your
Mm.
actual like intonation, whatever. And then comes nowadays, of course, the luxury, which is not anymore a luxury because everybody has it. Like you can record yourself immediately, instantaneously, which I
Mm.
didn't have when I was, younger.
Yeah.
So yeah, then you start hearing all the flaws. Then you say, "Oh, okay, so that's what I just did. Sounded good to me here."
Mm.
Now suddenly, you start paying more attention. I mean, I need to hear how it is under my ear, and you suddenly start hearing a little bit more, a little bit more.
Yeah, so in some ways it's not telling you exactly what to do. I mean, you can already hear it and say it's out of tune, but it's telling you that you need a reality check. It's kind of giving you, and it's kind of
Yeah,
a first step to really hearing yourself more properly.
yeah. And still, it's
Mhm.
really hard. Though.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and so that's why, I remember I was amazed. Years ago, in one of the like earlier Tchaikovsky competition, there was a wonderful violinist, Stephanie Chase, and
Sounds
she
familiar.
placed, I think, maybe third or something in the without Tchaikovsky. I don't know. It was maybe 66 or 70. I didn't hear her. I was too young, but I remember her being just also beautiful girl, and later, and she later had her career in New York Phil.
Hmm.
She became a member of New York Philharmonic. So, and she was, when there was some kind of interview that later I read, and the interview was there. She was, uh, unfortunately, I forgot who your teacher was, but she was talking about her teacher, and the question was, "What is the main thing you learned from him?" And she said, "To listen, to hear myself."
Mm,
And that was after Tchaikovsky competition already, And
right.
she was talking about her adult years, not being as a child. And back then I was like, I was pretty young still, and I was like, "Wow, I mean, obviously she could hear herself."
Yeah.
Some years later, I finally realized, that's what she meant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a funny thing. I mean, there's never an end to it.
no,
So kind of backtracking to the original question. Obviously, hearing yourself is a big part of being able to sustain your own progress without a teacher. Um, I, for me, it was kind of a very important period after finishing school that I would say that's when I learned how to play the violin. I'm kind of a autodidactic type. So,
started.
and I started very late, as you know. I started when I was 16, and I think I acquired a lot during school years, both from teachers, from colleagues. I was in America, I was in Europe, a lot of influences, but I didn't quite have time to really process it, really hear how it is mapping onto my playing, whether to really experiment with it. So after school, that's what I did, and it was for me like the most important thing, because I don't know what you think about this, but it seems to me it at least for me it's very hard to learn and to think at the same time, to kind of get information efficiently and like really learn and acquire knowledge and actually think and
You mean,
process the knowledge. So like acquiring and processing, I feel like
yeah.
often it's hard to do them simultaneously, like really do both
Well, I
fully.
I don't think I ever even could do this both. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there
Yeah.
must be some extra fast people who can do this, but usually, yeah, you acquire information, you hear it, you read it, right?
Yeah.
You learn it somehow. You learn. Then, if it's violin related, like maybe technique related or something, right? Then you go, then you try, and it's like, what? How? Uh, yeah, it's
Mm.
always steps. I mean, first step is getting it, and second step is starting thinking about this, and then trying it, and
Yeah, and experimentation, I would say, just to close out this first question. We have so many questions in the chat, actually. Julia
yeah,
can't
we
see
can
it, so
talk
I'm going to
more.
relay it. There are people who are kind of bargaining to say, okay, if you answer my question first, then I'll. Okay. But yeah, the last thing I would say is experimentation. And that's really key. Like once you don't have someone telling you what to do, if if that was your educational experience, which isn't necessarily bad, if you were mostly taking somebody's lead and following their directions and that was working for you, suddenly that's gone. You have to, yeah, learn how to acquire knowledge from different sources. Especially things that and this happened to me. I would come up against information that seemed contrary to what I was told, and kind of noticing my reaction to it. Was I like, oh, this is wrong? Just because, and eventually I started to really give everything a fair chance, and that was how I learned to experiment with things, and then kind of taking what works for me from different traditions, different approaches technically. I think that's something
Obviously,
you endorse as well, yeah.
I do endorse it, but I mean, yeah, you do it really well. I mean, you're a great example of how fast somebody can learn to play so well. 'Cause you did it in a very short period of time. I was much more academically taught, like I started early, da 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 da. So my path to it was more from rigid following the commands.
There are a lot
And
of
then
benefits to that, though.
there's definitely but there are benefits on both sides. That's what I
Yeah,
mean. But
yeah,
when you're adult, you has to be this way that you start implementing so much earlier than anybody else.
yeah, absolutely. So we have some questions about fourth finger, um, fourth finger problems, particularly playing thirds. So Joanna asked, um, she can't join us, but she asked a question about Are you familiar with the Korgiev exercises, or just these kind of
Korguyev.
Korguev or
Korguyev,
Vamos, who kind of reworked it?
Famous in India, and Mr.
Yeah,
Famous always called him Korgov. I think he
Korgov.
just
That's
Korgov
right.
because in Russian the accent is actually an U, Korguyev.
Korguev.
Yeah, Korguyev, but in English it's U-E,
Right.
like I think, yeah, Korguyev. I'm more right. I am more actually familiar with famous exercises. I
I
call
was
them
actually, I learned about this through Vamos as well, and then I went back. I'm like, oh, actually, this is
and look
mostly
to
just yeah,
Korguyev is different. I mean, there are quite a bit of
yeah.
changes that Mr. Famous implemented, but I think they're
Hmm.
very good. I mean, I actually, out of the two, I prefer probably Mr. Famous's thing.
Yeah, I like this because it's very. All you have to do is have this page of 7 patterns, and then
Right.
this half page. Literally, that's it, and then you mix and match to your heart's desire. That's what the whole book is. Um,
No, yeah, I first got this actually from him
yeah.
eons ago, like I don't know, 25 years ago, I think,
Uh huh.
when it was on one piece of paper. The whole
Ah. Well,
system
I
was
guess
on one
that's what it
paper. I
looked
still
like, right?
have it, and I gave it out to my students later on with explanations. But it's of course nicer now that there's a book,
Mm-hmm.
and you can
Mm-hmm.
just go and everything is clear. And yeah, but
Well,
yeah,
when I give this to students, I forbid them from using the book. I'm like,
of
memorize the
course, of
book.
course.
Maybe you can look at this page, fine. But
Hmm.
this is just, I mean,
Yeah,
it
it
should be
has to be.
memorized because it's useful and it's just so simple. So the question is about fourth finger playing thirds, and I think a lot of people have trouble with this, and we've talked about this before, and you've talked about this before, and you know a lot about it. Um, I think specifically she's asking about thirds pattern 1C and D. So that's pattern 4 is thirds, basically.
Okay, I need to get my glasses
Well,
on.
I'll just play it. I mean, it's there's nothing. So these 2 thirds. So whole steps. So all this kind of stuff you see in the book, and so the question is about fourth finger here, and I actually find fourth fingers harder for because I have that problem also, and for me it's much harder in different interval patterns. The whole step
I,
pattern's kind of
I think
okay.
the worst pattern would be the seventh, really.
Like,
You know, yeah, when
uh
there's a
huh, uh
seventh.
huh.
Yeah, but so for the to the person who's asking a question,
Hmm.
um, well, as we talked a little bit between ourselves about my whole journey with fourth finger, I'm not sure what her problem with fourth finger is. You see,
So she
that's the
elaborates here. Sorry, I should have kept reading. My pinky keeps bending its first joint in 90 degrees while being extended. So I think she's talking about this exactly what you were mentioning to me before, that the middle joint is flattened out.
yeah, the
And
middle
she
joint
actually
is.
mentions your Milstein exercise, so I think she's familiar with
Mhm.
some of your videos. So yeah, this problem, which a lot of people have, the locking thing.
Yeah, honestly, okay, so I my journey with this kind of fourth finger problem has been, yeah, I think upward every journey.
That's
So
always good.
yeah, well, at least I think this way. So I used to completely rigidly insist that all of my students learn to play with physiologically correct fourth finger,
Yeah.
which is like all the other fingers, right? So that
Mm.
this finger is also in, I don't know if you can see it, right? That is, I call
Hmm.
it supported shape, so all the knuckles are out. Actually, this is how the woman, I had this series, like the 3 interviews with a hand specialist that I
Mm.
made because I just loved her so much, Andres Terzic, and I asked her this some questions specifically from physiological standpoint. Why we teach it this way. I understand violinistically why, but is there a reason physiologically also to do this? And she was very confirming actually. So this shape, the naturally curved shape, is physiologically preferable. So then all joints are supported 30, 30, 30, I think, in
Right.
terms of the arc. But if the middle one is collapsing, yeah, then you have to press much more because, and then of course it stresses this joint a lot. In some people's cases, it's also affects the buckling joint,
Right.
and but that's physiologically. Like violinistically, I started, I fixed my finger way before I knew the so-called Milstein exercise, because in my case, I remember playing Shredik one time, and I was, I think, I don't know, 11 maybe, something like that, 11, 12. Yeah, I was just playing, there's a lot of repetition, like, and back then I would be really 4 times, repeat every exercise 4 times, like in my music was. And so I was repeating, and then you get onto the fourth finger, and there are like 3 of them in a row, and you repeat each of them 4 times. Yeah, it's very stressful. Now, of course, I wouldn't do it that way anyway, but anyhow, so I would get to the point, because I had this, I can still demonstrate it if I try. I
Yeah.
have to think about this to do this on that hand. But I could not lift it anymore because in my case, this poor muscle got so compressed and stiff and just stuck. I couldn't lift the finger. And when I lifted it, you see, if I lift it now, you see, it recovers.
Yeah.
But back then, this finger is not trained as much. So back then, it will just stay in that shape.
I see.
So when I finally managed to tear it off the fingerboard, it stayed in that shape, and I was like, oh, and then it had to snap. I had to snap it out, so it was bad. And so that I realized I never see this happening to anybody, when I watched other people. So I realized that I had to fix it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know the Milstein exercise back then, so I was fixing it an old-fashioned way, and I still managed anyway. So it took longer though. But so later, then I made all my students do it. However, again more lately, I realized that there are lots of very good violinists who play with that finger collapsing, but it's functional. It doesn't get stuck. So I think the main thing here is whether it bothers a player in any way, either bothers with either pain or, or like for instance, if somebody has this, again, I'm showing like this, you see my pull it and it actually
I can't
snaps.
even do that anymore. I trained
Yeah,
myself to
I,
avoid it.
I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I cannot do it with my left either. It
Oh yeah,
won't do
that's
it because
okay.
it's
Yeah.
much stronger. So basically, what it
Interesting.
means, it's much stronger. You see what I mean? So to the question, uh, if it doesn't bother the person physically and they can sustain whatever task they have here and it works, I I don't interfere with this anymore.
Yeah,
But
that's
where it
logical.
really doesn't work too much, what I noticed also I remember the first person I noticed this kind of pinky, to my total surprise, was Oistrach in one of the recordings. I mean, in
Ah,
one
yeah.
of the videos, and it
Interesting.
was closer because I mean, normally he didn't use it, but sometimes I looked and said, "Oh my God." He also had this. I mean, he had this, but meanwhile, it was absolutely pliable. He
Right.
takes it off. So basically, uh, uh, mechanically, there's a problem when this kind of stuck finger, only goes that way, and that interferes with fast passages. Again, there are people like, I guess Milstein was playing with really kind of
Kramer.
straight.
Kramer also partly because he has huge fingers. Very strange setup that somehow
Yeah, I
works.
mean, yes, exactly. So, I mean, there are people who do it, but one thing I must say that people who play with like truly straight finger, like it looks like this, it still doesn't buckle anywhere. It's really straight finger, so all joints are actually nicely tight,
Yeah.
in a good way. So, but for people for whom things buckle, it means that we are lax. We have super laxity in our joints, and those joints are always unstable and they're weaker. So, for the person who was asking a question, I would say if she is bothered either by result, like violinistic result, or physically it's unpleasant, she feels stress, strengthening is the only way, and just
Yeah.
keep strengthening. Go to that. I would send her to my channel to this interview with Andras Terzik, hand specialist. It's one of the three, and she gives at the end of that one, she gives exercises with silly putty and or therapeutic putty and some others. And yeah, it just strengthens.
Yeah, I would say a couple things just to add to that. I can echo everything you're saying, but also considering the shape of the hand and just everything we can do to, or kind of reconsidering everything you can do to accommodate your fourth finger and kind of, I think that's a common thing in violin, thinking backwards from four for a number of reasons, you know, whether you're playing tenths or I think for this as well, like, so if we have, I think this is a more difficult one with the low tube. I would start with four and play, you know, my best four. And like, I don't have this perfect Hilary Hahn finger. I could keep some roundness in this middle joint, but it's not perfect. But, and then working backwards from that and thinking, okay, I usually go to these three things. I usually go to like, okay, how much of this, and then how much of this. And it's kind of all one twisty feeling and different bodies kind of, I see people playing like this sometimes, and I don't know how they do it. Probably not sustainable, but some people are flexible that way. And I see some people with the arm back here, and like James Ennis, I don't know how everything is perfect. So, but investigating that, I would say to the questioner, setting up your fourth finger for success instead of thinking there's all the other fingers and then I put four on and I pray, but rather start with four. So, like, where does this one go? The same thing for vibrato probably as well.
Yes, and to add to this, exactly, starting with fourth, that's exactly the only thing that we can do. And the other thing is also, like with Venus, when I add these exercises to people who actually restructure it, I always go in the third position. Always. Don't play in the first position. Play in the third position, or the same thing will be. It's much easier to align here, or even maybe fourth. Well, fourth is already. So basically, you want to be closer to the fingerboard for sure with the bass joint. That's what you do it through this movement.
Yeah, that's what the Milstein exercise kind of simulates, right?
It forces, it forces to go.
For those that don't know it, it's when you kind of just try doing this instead of this, and you feel just how this finger starts to feel like the previous. It's just nice and close, and probably easier to make it round.
Yes,
I remember when you showed me this for the first time. I loved it.
You know what? It's this basically, like going through that first, just holding like that and feeling like, okay, it's really what I call supported, just without violin, you know, the arc, because it's the strongest thing that there is, you know, just very. They both are. You see, they both are on any hand. Actually, that hand is also good. So then the Milstein basically forces the hand to be the closest to a possibility of playing. So I think that they talk to each other. I mean, the thumb and the fourth finger there in, you know, like this.
This is the nicest my pinky will ever look.
Yeah, and then, and so, but you see, like I had to, like you said, that Hilary Hahn position, I had to acquire it. I guess it's called Hilary Hahn position now. I can call it this too. I mean, the really, really like out all the
pinky
joints.
As middle finger, basically, or whatever.
Yeah, and I had to do it because mine was just not functional otherwise.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Well, that's 2 questions down. We're definitely not going to run out of questions. A lot of comments here. Great to see everyone writing. I'll try to get through as many as possible. So we have Hellblade 1010 asks a very unorthodox question, he says, about a way of playing the violin that most people shun it away. And he's talking about, there's a thing called the Paganini hold, which several violinists have talked about, especially Ruggiero Ricci. And I tried it for myself, and I actually like it. Shifting was easier, became easier for my chin since no shoulder rest. Additional support from the elbow. Yeah. I mean, I know about Ricci, and you know he has his theories on the bow, had his theories on the bow.
I
And
don't even know what it's called, Paganini hold, I guess.
I guess maybe he's talking about the left hand, not the right. Yeah, with the left hand. Well, I think the Paganini hold on the left hand is basically permanent third, fourth position. The rest is, I mean, it's just like the absolute opposite that is usually taught as the questioner
Well,
observes.
not really. It's close. First of all, okay, let's not forget that Paganini had a very unusual physique. Okay, so if somebody has similar physique to Paganini, or they function to that similar physique, they might not look like Paganini, but meanwhile things work that way. That's fine, of course.
Yeah,
So Paganini's hand was very big, fingers were extremely long, and that enables you, of course, by staying here in reaching and playing in first position.
and crawling in general, I think, just
Huh?
in
And yeah,
principle, crawling mostly.
right. And you see, the thing is, there was nothing in here. This wasn't there, nothing wasn't there, no support. And meanwhile, the guy managed to do these amazing things. Of course, he had to. Shifting is the most difficult thing in violin. Anyway,
Yeah,
in left hand, it's shifting. And so if you place your hand in one position, in kind of in the middle position of the violin, really, right now I will ruin my bow here. So, and just function that way, it's so much faster, all of your,
right.
so much faster. So actually, I didn't know about Ruggiero Ricci or that exactly. I started using this myself, figuring it out. I needed some kind of passage really fast. I think it was on the Tchaikovsky cadenza at some point in the years ago. And so instead of going here, I decided to do it from here. My finger never did. Yeah, so you could do then, yeah, it's like, and here you reach,
Do you
right?
do two,
So
F sharp one or two?
two.
Okay, so really interesting.
Yeah, no shifting. So the thumb is already there, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that
interesting.
that, that is thing. And and I at first I played normally, like with shift, and then all the time I was resting on this passage. Like when I come to this, I would use it on stage. It always worked, actually.
And so you have to let go of this nice normal
Oh
contact
yeah,
point, right?
yeah,
It kind of just goes way under.
yeah. It kind of goes, well, like with vibrato, right? I mean, normally, yes. Normally, I have I sense, or I touch rather,
Yeah,
the right the neck. But here, like vibrato, we come off
right.
to
And
one
we let
fifth,
it
right?
dip.
A little bit, and the same thing here. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
first finger is somewhere in there, and I just like not touch. Yeah.
Right.
At first, I tried to do the 1-1. I remember, but it would be too much 1-1, and I decided
Uh-huh.
that actually the two was easier. The main thing was the ability to get this part of the hand separated from the thumb. So thumb stays, and where am I? And then you just
Mm-hmm.
go here and there. And that's how one can try to do it if they're trying to. I don't know about all the Paganini tricks or how the person calls it, technique or whatever. I
Some
don't
of
know
them
because
probably went to the grave with
yeah,
him. Yeah.
yeah. But it's as I said before, it's very good to experiment.
Yeah.
It's really not good to be stuck in one thing, especially if that thing doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
If one thing does work, I would say it's probably okay to be stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
No need to explore more if it works all the time.
Yeah, and a benefit of this approach, I think, is also that it encourages a certain flexibility. It almost forces you to be loose because it's just impossible otherwise. And there is a danger with kind of this very square thing. And I mean, I pretty much play like that, but I'm somewhat aware of the pitfalls of it. There's a danger that, you just invite in this sense of static.
You mean like position, position, position?
Yeah, as like so shifting and keeping the frame as opposed to crawling and like extreme thumb movements, which is kind of
Yeah,
Ricci style.
yeah. Well, again, those people play completely without this any kind of support here, right?
Right.
So that's impossible to do otherwise, actually. So the uh, what I usually, when it's funny, by the way, I don't know if you have any questions about this later on in the chat, because I feel like I'm veering off into another subject, but that's related, of making people looser.
Yes.
If, for instance, one of my students had traumas, or, like getting stuck or pain in here or anywhere in that area, or tendonitis, the same thing, still comes from there. So I usually I take the shoulder thing away. And yeah, you know what I mean? But of course, it's only for, well, some of them actually stay later on without it, but most return back. It's just more to find the feeling to actually allow violin to rest here
Mm.
and move like rolling, and redo the thinking of the shifting, and do shifting in different ways. And this, of course, all in slow tempo, because it's more for recovery from physical injury. I do it. But some people actually, yeah, they recover, and then they stay with playing without the support.
It's a healthy
Um,
thing to do, I think, for a
yes,
number of
I
reasons.
one time, I'm talking about this in my video, like shoulder rest or not, I think, whatever my video was called, right, shoulder rest or not. Um, I talked there about, I tried to learn to play without it for a year.
Hmm.
So for a year, I just packed this thing away and never used it. And I did switch. I realized also that I will not stay with it, but it did allow me so much more in terms of, flexibility and,
Hmm.
yeah, all of that, different techniques.
Mr. Paganini, we will never know your secrets. Okay, we have some other questions here. Let's see. Good evening from Sri Lanka. Good evening from Pakistan. So we do have people in that part of the world. Very good. We are being called a great pair here. Let's see. Do you take lessons now that you're an established virtuoso? Fred D asks. Please take that one.
I don't, because,
Too busy giving them.
um, I-
You're too
yeah,
busy giving them.
yeah. No, the thing is that if if I find the possibility to play for somebody whose opinion I can trust, uh, I would.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, right now, I play almost none. I play so much less because of the condition that I have in my hand. But in general, when I did play, first of all, of course, I was lucky because I had my family. I had this mother of mine with this most gorgeous tone and everything on earth. Then my brother grew up and became a wonderful violin. My father was too. So for a while, like when I moved to the United States and I would, without the teacher, what I did, I would record my concerts.
Uh-huh.
Back then I was playing recitals. I was, had management, a rather okay performing career, you know, um, busy enough, and so on. Anyway, I will record my concerts, or they will, in venues, they will record them. I will have recordings. I will send them to them for critique, you know, audio recordings at that point. So that was helpful, because sometimes, yes, I would hear some things with them. Later, it was, you know, I remember, demonstrating something for Mr. Vamus. I call him still Mr. Vamus. I'm much younger than them. So, but later on, it just becomes sort of maybe not necessary. Although, if I have somebody of, my close to me way of playing, not way of playing, but like, for you, for instance, I would play for you. Oh, no problem.
I
Because, yeah,
have
you
played
can
for
see,
you, and I probably
and
should
you play.
eventually
Yeah,
again too.
sometimes I play for my good students
Yeah.
whose opinion I can trust. Yeah, because I mean, sometimes it's just little things like, oh, it looks like, oh, yeah, for sure. Little adjustment, and bam, it
Yeah, we can't
goes.
have like 100% view of objective reality, even
No,
the
we
most
can't.
analytical of us.
Absolutely. And that's why the ballet, the great ballet, survives so much longer without any flaws. The great ballerinas and just anybody there,
Hmm.
because they're constant every day. They are under the eyes of a very trusted, very good professional
Uh-huh.
coach, who themselves were always in the past great dancers. So
Yeah. Um, and if I answer that question, it's mostly because, let's see, I'm too lazy. Um,
Well, but don't you think though there's
I
this
need more
also the
people I trust.
yeah no no
That's it.
but do you if you need I mean do you really need them? I mean they should be there.
Right.
You know, that's a thing. And lately, I heard one of my colleagues, a very good, well, like former colleague, I would say. Anyway, a little bit younger violinist, not by much, but she played for me. And she was so happy that she could play for somebody. The same thing, especially when you start teaching and, you know, you're the teacher and then you go for somebody. It's very risky.
Yeah. I mean, I've
It
had
feels,
enough traumatic experiences in master classes where after about
yeah,
5 seconds, it's clear that I could be anybody, that this person is just doing, like, giving a spiel and playing to the audience and like telling me some things, but it could have been anyone. It's not really very
it's not
useful.
you. Mm.
Yeah, and so I hate the idea of being in a situation where I'm playing for someone and then I just get a bunch of information that either I think is irrelevant or I disagree with. I mean, I'm open, but I certain things I know. And so that's where the trust comes in.
Right.
Like you trust that the person will kind of interact with you the way that would be helpful and reasonable and just kind of you're on the same wavelength to some extent at least, such that
Correct.
that has to be. So yeah.
That you see that the person is truly interested in you,
Right.
showing of themselves. I mean, I would imagine it probably is not a question of our listeners are asking, but you know, in your experience, do you think that understanding psychology of the student is of primary importance, or at least
The
understanding?
psychology of a particular student.
Yes,
Yeah.
psychological makeup, rather.
I mean, to the extent that I'm able to do that, yeah. I mean that's just it's so important because I think I noticed that first, like most strongly, when I noticed that I'm telling some piece of advice to my student, and then I realize that they went home and it affected them in some way that was unintended, um, and then they come back and I don't see progress, and I'm wondering why, and so I started thinking about how they're interpreting it and what state of mind it puts them in to kind of try the things that I'm saying, and of course what they're it's so individual, of course, but
That's what it is. It's so individual, so it's
yeah,
very important. Speaking about the master classes, even you know, in a master class situation, I will try to see what this person is,
exactly.
and you know, kind of can see it when they play, even, and especially how they react to like my first words. You can already see, oh, okay, there it's this way, or this person is that way, and so you kind of start addressing it
Hmm.
uh, with different words, maybe,
Yeah,
and
and I think
different.
choosing your battles in master classes, like
Yeah, or, yeah.
doing less, ignoring a lot of things necessarily, and it's nice when students are asked questions, and it really feels like a good. I mean, I don't know. I don't see why it shouldn't just be a good lesson. Sorry to the crowd, but I think there's probably a way to make it a good lesson. But if you're a talented orator, also bring the crowd in a little bit.
Yeah, that's
I
very
don't
true.
know.
But Daniel, should we go to more questions? I don't see
oh,
them.
oh,
I think
oh
we have
yeah.
more.
Oh yeah, we should. We have a question about loosening up the wrist. Loosening up the wrist from Sonata Panada. It's a nice name.
Oh, yes, I know.
I think that, yeah, and that dovetails with something that I've been thinking about. I wanted to ask you about bow changes, and I think the wrist is so crucial in bow changes, obviously. So I know people that play, and then people. Or no.
Yeah, so I'm one of those. I'm one of those people. I when I was little, I was playing more like this, you know.
Uh huh.
I guess I should move it. Oh, where am I moving here? So I would that's kind of was a lot of Russians play that way. I mean, I don't alter, by the way, here where I change when I hold the bow,
Hmm.
but everything was on the first finger. So when I was here, I think I don't remember how it felt, but it was a long time ago. But I don't know what I probably was doing something maybe a little bit with fingers, maybe not. But I remember when I switched to thinking that I'm holding it more in the middle,
Hmm.
that, and especially after coming to the United States and being introduced to so-called Galamian hand, which actually Mostras did exactly the same hand. So his students played all that way like Galamian did, since Galamian studied with Mostras. Anyway, but yeah, I just find that, loosening the wrist is, for me, first of all, I do like it. I do like it. I don't particularly love when things are completely not moving, even though I sometimes, sometimes on stage you're in piano. Like if I'm on piano and I'm at the frog, no, I'm not going to do
Right.
this wishy-washy thing, as I call it. But it's a good wishy-washy things for many other situations. But I mean, if I'm on piano here, I will be very, very little. I mean, I would allow little movement because I don't want to disturb things in here.
Hmm.
So, um, but the main thing, most of the time, I believe we play like in mezzo forte area, right?
Hmm.
Mezzo forte, mezzo piano. That's like most of our playing, and therefore you have to trust the bow. You have to know how the bow plays, what I call without you.
Mm.
So especially in this area, that's when we need it. So you only hold the weight of the bow on that little portion where it really needs it. Meanwhile, this is perfectly doable even without these fingers being
Right.
involved, you know.
I,
So
speaking of piano, um, I'm a big subscriber to this principle and just everything surrounding it and what it does. Um, I've been thinking lately about piano, and what I've noticed is that the importance of hooking, that the hooking function of the index finger. Usually it sits on the bow, and we would never wrap it around, but then you tilt, and suddenly I think that's to
well,
me
it
that's like
wants, yeah, it wants to do it. And you know what? Again, as long as I think if I were trying to formulate this, it would be,
pinky and index only.
yeah, everything has to be able to move.
Right.
That's the main thing. Everything in our hands has to be able to move
But in
because
piano,
in piano. So if in piano, if it, well, I mean, if it's not necessary, don't move it.
well, right, but you were mentioning how, and I think it's totally right, where you want to restrict motion. I think this is
I guess, yes, I guess you're right because I do tilt the bow.
if you
And so the
tilt,
bow, so I do tilt. Yeah. I
right,
mean, I
and
always play with the tilt.
yeah,
I'm a Franco-Belgian beginnings and the endings of mine will be
but
still
then you never
Franco-Belgian.
really do this, do you? Because it's always a little bit
Correct. I
tilted.
mean, so basically, when I show this, of course, the bow is not tilted
Yes.
because otherwise, if I do it with tilted bow, I will have to do it that way. I'll have to protrude my thumb here so the bow doesn't fall forward. But when I play, my fingers are the natural fence, so to speak, and the bow is leaning against that fence.
You have some
But
give.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's just again, so many people these days play with flat hair,
Yeah.
the whole thing, the pluses, minuses to it, like to this one as well. But anyway, so yeah, when the bow is tilted, I remember, by the way, again, being little, when I was little and I was playing in this way,
Mm.
that really taught me, well, or not taught me, it pushed me to make a hook here, but real hook, bad hook, okay, not a good hook,
Mm.
because you're playing like this at the, again, where am I? The other way around. No, where am I? Which way
You go
should I go?
left. Other way.
Gosh,
There it is.
okay, so when you're this way at the tip and really tilted,
Yeah.
so this is easily on the stick, and then you go up here, and it doesn't want to relinquish. At least mine did not want to relinquish the stick, so that's how I probably was stuck with a high wrist at the frog
Yeah.
back then, you know. But Meanwhile, now if I go to the tip and I still may feel this way, it's fine. Because I unglue it when I come over here if I need to.
Hmm.
But again, as you said, if I am in piano, yeah, perhaps it will be a little hooky.
Well, it reminds me of what pianists, kind of the wisdom from pianists is when you're playing piano, your arm, your whole apparatus is actually more tight, just to restrict and to control the small motion. And then forte is actually loose so that you can.
You know what? I have my partner who's a brilliant pianist who
Right, what does
kind
he
of like
think?
himself started playing very late, and he achieved this fantastic results also, with a lot of like what you did. So I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Would he not agree with that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe we
I mean, I'm sure there are different schools of thought on that, but I think that the idea is salient that if you want a really small, precise motion, you want the biggest lever possible so that the motion is, because the smallest lever will be fickle and kind of, and the biggest will be most massive and stable. It's like in eye surgery, when
yeah.
they do these like little incisions, they don't do it with their hand. They actually do it with their arm because you want the
Really?
smallest variation. So kind of removing any flexibility. But that's like a special case probably with like an orchestra. If you're sitting in orchestra and for like a year doing this.
Correct. Yeah, it all will be all the I mean, but yeah, that's also is for us because we hold so the weight. Yeah. Well, but in the orchestra, it will be only a really, um, I would say, carnivorous concertmaster who would keep these bowings.
Or carnivorous conductor.
Conductor.
Well, sometimes the conductor says less, and the violins just lift the bow off the string, and the conductor's like,
That's
perfect.
exactly right. Yeah. That's
And
why
so you're just doing a lot of this.
Wear a bow.
Okay, good. Let's look at some other questions here. Can you tell us? Sanjith Day asks, "Can you two tell us the stories of where your violins come from?" Go ahead. What are you? I'm not sure what you're playing on actually.
Carl Becker. It came from a
Ah,
store.
nice. Carl
Did
Becker
you?
Jr., so the son,
Carl?
the famous one, the most famous one.
Yeah. Is he the son?
I think it's Carl Becker Jr. because there's even
I thought he was a father.
one level higher. I don't know,
Mine
maybe.
is mine is the 1926, I think.
Oh, maybe that is the
I
Father,
think it's the father,
the
but
Son,
it is
and the Holy
A.
Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good fiddles. I like.
Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. This one has a bit better G string than most others, so that's how I got it.
Yeah,
And,
mine
and
is
and it's healthy. What is yours?
Andrew Ryan, also modern. Not, I mean, yours isn't that modern. Mine is 2013. So he's a Boston, Providence-based maker, and yeah, I've had it for 10 years or so. It's
Great.
nice
Oh,
to be in relationship with a living violin maker because
absolutely, yeah, I'm sure.
it's
You
fun.
can go to him and have him look at it, right? Still.
Yeah, yeah, and we meet up pretty often, and when he has a new violin and he's in the area, like let's try these violins, and it's always fun to. And he's trying to improve them, and I get to try different instruments, and I like it.
Mm.
But I wouldn't say no to a Strat if someone offered me. Um, Captain Slow asks, "What's the current trend for classical music, and what do you guys see performing artists in general? Performing art in general is heading. With YouTube and music streaming, monetization is shifting away from recordings." Yeah, I think some of that news hasn't hit certain corners of the music world. That yeah, you can't make money really like releasing recordings and selling CDs. It's like the collapse of the Soviet Union. There's parts in the forest that still haven't heard the news. So classical
Yeah,
music is the same because we're a little bit sometimes behind.
yeah. Well, the classical music, yeah. I mean, it's a bit for me it would be a bit hard to say it in general, because a lot of times you kind of concentrate on the particular area in which you are
Yeah.
or that you're familiar with, and then you think that all is concentrated on this area. So in my case, I'm dealing so much with growing violinists or people playing competitions or wanting to play. And one thing I tell you, it gets to you eventually. Everybody's playing the same thing. Everybody's playing the same over and
Yeah.
over and over. And all these growing generations, they still want to play the venerated concerto by this person or that, or it's like. But it's also like, yeah, it's like what you call it, the process of entering into adulthood in a way, right? You have to go through certain steps,
Mm.
initiation. So that also understandable. But after a while, it's just like, okay, people, let's play something else. Let's play some other music. Maybe former ages, even not necessarily contemporary music. If there's nothing,
Taylor
uh,
Swift might be.
huh?
Taylor Swift might be an interesting proposition.
I don't know who that is, but I heard the name several times. Yeah.
There was a funny. I saw a funny picture of her on the cover of a Deutsche Grammophon album with like the album is Orchestra Antica Köln or something doing the cantatas with Taylor Swift singing. It's just like
So she's like a
really
pop
funny.
singer.
She is very much a pop singer. Doesn't do much Bach. Not much Bach.
That's interesting. Well, that's another one of the trends that I also notice in classical music, that so many, especially orchestras, they started like, I would say first I thought flirting would be the word, but now
Yes.
I realize it's no flirting anymore. It's a headlong dive uh, into soundtracks, playing soundtracks and all kinds of arrangements. And
Yeah.
I think that's how they attract or hope to attract the audience, which I think is pretty false way to do it. To go
Well,
about it. It's
I
just
mean, adapt or die, right? And
true.
some things have to die so that new other things can be born, and other things have to adapt and they do their best. And
That's true too. Yeah.
you know,
Anyway,
like,
so
well, I guess on the topic of the performing artist, yeah, I think the pessimistic view is not as warranted as one might think. There's so many possibilities. I mean, we're having this conversation right now on YouTube, and you have a channel and you reach many more people than you would have otherwise, and myself as well. Um, it's a different kind of thing. So, in some sense, you sacrifice, you know, selling a CD to someone, let's say, and let's say you give it for free, but it reaches 1 million people. That's an
yeah,
interesting situation, and then maybe that 1 million people likes you, and oh, lo and behold, there are easy ways to support artists these days, and so maybe 1 million people give you $1 a month, and like
that would be a very good idea. Actually,
everyone
maybe
go to Julia's channel and give her $1 a month,
yeah.
maybe
Well,
even a
not even a
hundred.
month. The point is that if every subscriber on your channel will give you $1,
We get to the
just
whole point of this stream.
oh
Ladies
yeah,
and
for
gentlemen,
sure.
I have something to
Yeah.
sell you. No. It's weird because I'm very into that whole world, but I'm also very allergic to kind of talking about money and just, maybe I'm just an old Russian.
Maybe because you're actually not old.
I mean, inside, I never spent much time in Russia either, but there's this thing of not talking about money and like that's very taboo. Um, I think among artists that's a common thing because we're so pure at heart. So anyway,
Next question.
yeah, okay, we have a couple of interesting questions here. Leonardo Bastos. What are the main Soviet violin methods and technique treatises, and why are Soviet pedagogues so little known in the West?
Treatises? I mean, written things. Well, there are quite a few things that were written in Soviet Union, but they're all in Russian.
Yeah, that's an interesting iron curtain there
Observation.
because um,
So, yeah,
Grigorian,
Gregorian, wonderful
everyone
scales.
would do it. Wait, ready for this? Ready? Look at that.
Gamma Gregoriana.
Yeah, so
Right.
like all the kids did this, and here no one knows about it. It's actually a very nice
Mhm.
system.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good system, very good book. I mean, again, you know what, honestly say, I avoid the word system now because people, I think a lot of people, they start thinking again rigidly what system
Right.
implies. System is just the way to call a book. In my opinion, like this is a book of scales, how you can study scales. This one is more, I guess, of a system. Rather, for instance, flash is not, I mean, it's called a system, but it really isn't a system of any sort. It's just, every scale and bunch of hard exercises there.
Yeah.
This one is more of maybe a system because it's just builds up a young player from beginning to on
And
and
it
on and on.
goes pretty. I mean, you start at open
Yes.
strings and you end well with whatever this is.
Correct. Yeah, so basically you can use it. And I think this was, but by the time we went to like this kind of double stops and everything,
Hmm.
like you said before, all exercises immediately have to be memorized. All exercises that, of course, concern scales and arpeggios. So we would never be able to play one lesson. Like you are assigned a scale, next lesson you come, of course, you play by memory. You cannot play a scale in a
Yeah,
lesson.
because then your attention is not on fully
Correct. You
on
just
the technique.
right, right.
Yeah.
So it was completely not allowed. So by the time, but of course, when you're little, when you first start, you use this. I'm looking at the Grigorian in there. And Grigorian, by the way, is based on Grimali. And I don't know, in
Mm.
English it's pronounced Hrimali, Hrimali, but anyway, but in the actual language it's pronounced Grimali. So Grigorian based it on Grimali, but the layout I think is better than Grigorian and yeah, Hrimali, no, Grzimali.
Yeah, this is. I think the Gregorian has some more kind of inventive variations.
Correct.
Probably this
Correct.
is a
He
bit
just
more
put,
straightforward. Although I love
right.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah, me
This is
too.
great.
So he put things just basically how the teacher can teach and not look anywhere else, and it's just basically you cover
Aha.
all the angles pretty much that way.
We have hello
Without,
from David Radzinski, my friend,
oh yeah, right.
and he's yeah. There's a chat. There's a conversation going on about studying with the Vamoses, which there's some other Vamos students in the chat. So fun times.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. For instance, somebody was asking me. Actually, our mutual subscriber asked me if I know of any translations or translated. And yeah, I should probably just sit down and translate the Grigorian book. I mean, there's so many books I would like to translate because yes, as the question was, there are very good materials written in Russian. It needs to
Yeah,
be
I
translated.
like this. I have all these Russian etude books. Like you probably know this one.
Oh yes, yeah,
It starts from very easy etudes, kind of
correct. And then
things
goes
you.
through positions, first and then second. By the way, first and second position. It's like not first and third necessarily, but first and second position is taught very early.
Right.
Yeah, and then it goes by classes, by year level.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder.
And you
Yep.
see some of the etudes like don't Opus 37. You see things you know, and then you see all kinds of things
Yeah,
that were in Russia that you've never heard of. So it's a nice
correct.
kind of a progressive book,
Yeah.
ending with Rod 12 etudes, which
Mhm.
also not very often played these days. The 24 caprices are popular. Do you teach these? The 12?
The 12, no, I guess I only know them from here, from the Russian books, these
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
I never
Uh,
paid much attention to them. Maybe it's interesting.
they also have quite a few Spohr Opus 38, which we
Mm.
always never use. But I think 38 are, if I'm not mistaken, Opus 38 is with the second violin, and that's why perhaps, I mean, of course, would be without second
Yes.
violin. You just play the hard part.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Berio. I remember
Kamirovsky, very popular in this book.
Komarovsky, yeah, but Komarovsky was very big also. He was a violinist, and he and then Baklanova,
Yes.
wonderful.
I think she's the one that arranged this whole book, right? She kind of
It could be, yeah. There's
the editor,
several people.
or yeah,
Fortunato was a big arranger, and
Ajemova.
Adjemova, no, Elena
Ajemova.
Adjemova, no. She's a younger generation person.
It's another book. I think this is like, yeah, 1989.
Yeah, I remember her being in conservatory.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I mean, that going back to the first question, just about teaching yourself after you're done, and that's something I did after school. Is I went back through every etude. I went through all the Sevchik books. I got my hands on these Russian etude books, and just went through most of it. You know, trying to do a few per day, and maybe keeping some of the hard things, and that was so
Wow,
useful.
that's excellent suggestion, by the way. That is absolutely fantastic
I love
suggestion.
etudes because when they're well written, they are little gems of music, you know, like nice third rate compositions where you can do phrasing and do nice things, and sometimes
Yeah,
even very good compositions. So,
yeah, exactly. Like lately, I love the Mazas number
mm,
seven. Mazas number seven, I call it Arioso. In my studio, it's called Arioso. And I actually had a little competition in my studio. All my students had to learn it. Yeah,
oh, look at
yeah.
that. I think I
Mhm.
was teaching it recently as well. I'm
Yeah,
glad there
so
aren't exploitive comments written here because sometimes those do make it in as well.
yeah. So
It's a
all
good
my
one.
students had to learn this one on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what I
I
did
have to
with
practice.
this one? By the way, this is probably it's which edition? It's American from here, or it's not the Russian one, is it?
It's Galamian.
I mean, okay, yeah. So what I did, I took the Russian edition of the same thing, and I kind of erased even some other markings in there because markings are already what this particular editor, in this case Galamian,
A lot of
wanted this.
open Fs. A lot of open Fs here in the Galamian editions.
Yeah,
They were very good. They were very good.
right.
They could do that kind of
But you
thing.
know, like crescendo diminuendo, where they're placed, you know, the tempo markers and all that, it's a little bit
Yeah.
different than the editions. And so I tried to kind of take them off, some of them, and so my students will have to create their own fingerings, their own bowings if they liked. Yeah, it was good. And I like that little piece.
We have up $5 New Zealand from Amanda. Thank you very much, Amanda. She says, let's celebrate their first super on a live stream. Okay.
Mhm.
Hopefully the first of
We're all
many.
for it.
We have 20 United States fiat dollars from Arsenti, who we all know. Big thanks
Yeah.
to Daniel's and Julia's channels. And yeah, that's nice to see. Let's see, some more questions here. Super says, I'm a high school student. I think this is pretty cool. You know what? That's the nicest thing I've heard all week. Coming from a high school student in 2024,
Uh-huh.
my God, we're doing something right. Good morning, good afternoon. Any thoughts on Arnold Gingrich's book, A Thousand Mornings of Music, Journals of Obsession of the Violin? I'm not familiar with that, are you?
What is
From
again, book?
Lou B. It's called Arnold Gingrich, that's the author, A Thousand Mornings of Music, a journal of obsessions, obsession the violin, of the violin. Yeah, okay. I'll look it up.
Mm.
Very nice, very nice. Someone's saying, is no one going to give me advice for semi-quarter notes on thirds and fingered octaves? With a lot of sad faces. From Asdruval. Semi-quarter notes, maybe he means half steps.
8 notes, maybe.
Or that.
Semi-quavers.
Well, we'll let that question stand as it is. Peter asks, I have played the 3-octave G major scale for many years. I would now like to learn 4-octave G major scale. What is the best left-hand position for the final octave? Oh, that's It's a good topic.
Uh, it's definitely, I mean, you're very high up. When you're so high up here, it's better to go and move the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Four. So yeah, I prefer to do this. Of course, you could go there in such a way that you end on D on the first finger, like, but it is so
That's
it's
difficult.
too cramped. It's too
Yeah.
cramped. So yeah, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, and then back.
And in terms of position, what do you think about thumb and just kind of how much
Okay, so
rotation and all
here,
of that?
yeah, here it's very individual. So there are three ways to do it, really. So one of them I cannot do at all because that is when the thumb can stay here all the way, and
Mm.
that's for people who have a really great stretch. And here, this will, yeah, or hand is bigger. So even though my hand is not small, yeah, if you can stay there like that and it's
I
comfortable,
think I
it's
I think I have to. Otherwise, I don't know where I am.
right. So, so there, as I said, the three ways. So I don't stay there because it hurts right here and
Mm.
always when I was little even. So it had nothing to do with you know, not training it or whatever. It just always, I had the restriction here somehow, okay. So for people like me, then the two other things exist. You either can go here, but don't leave, basically, you don't leave this place.
So
So there
not
has to
going
be
this way.
tension, right? Not like here all the
Mm-hmm,
way.
mm-hmm.
Although I have seen people even do that. I don't know how they do it because it feels very flimsy to me.
Smaller
Uh,
hands typically, right?
Yeah, much smaller, only much more. But
Yeah.
basically, teaching wise, I always say use the stretch. Always
Mm.
use the stretch because it's just easy. You don't want to be too much forward there because your return will be longer.
Right.
It's simpler. So of course, Paganini, if your hand is like Paganini, you can just stay all the way there, then here you are. But my fingers won't even be close there. My third has hard time reaching, and fourth, forget it. So then in
Mm-hmm.
that case, we either go here or in my case I go around there, but again I try to stay right by the neck, so when I go back I of course don't squeeze there at all,
Mm.
and then it open and then it slides back that way, so it's either here or more on the top, like right there, which I think you're
What
more
do you think
prone to.
about clearing the wood or
Yeah,
not?
yes, it absolutely helps to go higher like this, to be above a bit,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the worst thing is to do to be here, low, and 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 that. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
kind of constrict
nobody should do this.
because you
So there
can't.
should be support of the hand. Yeah, completely. Yeah, so
Mm.
above is better. But again, for some people, like when I was younger and I was dealing a lot with my very basically unfortunate biological nature of my left hand, is that my first finger is very, very long, very abnormally long. And so therefore in this position, this one, it collapses all the time. And I
Mm.
had to really get used to it and not panic when it is in this very unsightly shape. You see, it collapses backwards. You
Oh yeah.
also can do this and just roll forward on a nail. I find it less comfortable, yeah. That is why, you see, because yours is nice length. It's not too long. Mine is
I mean, I'm
mine is very,
essentially on the nail here, but I'm not pressing much.
yeah, yeah,
Like
but
I'm
in
on the
my case, you
inside.
see, in my case, it will be impossible to do. I don't know how I turn here. No, I guess it's not right. I will just show like this. So mine is not on the nail. Mine is on the big part of the nail because it's so much extra
Uh
finger I
huh. Uh
have.
huh.
So length, I mean lengthwise. And at first I didn't have this problem because I was still growing up, and I guess my hand kind of solidified this way by the time I was maybe 16, and I realized it was very uncomfortable.
Mm.
When you grow up in puberty and finally you're like in the shape you were later on,
Right.
I was so uncomfortable. I remember asking my mother, whose hand looked so comfortable in our positions, asking her like, why is this happening? And really didn't look at this too closely. She's like, oh, I don't know. Just go practice. No, it shouldn't be like this, she told me. Then later I realized, well, it has to be either this way or that way
Yes.
because there's no other way. It just doesn't fit. Yeah.
Yeah, and an interesting thing happens also if you start vibrating there. So that's kind of... Like
Yeah.
for me, I don't know what you think about this, but if I'm playing a scale versus...
Will be different shape. Yeah.
Like when I'm vibrating, there's no way I'm ready to play any.
Lower.
It's totally flat and kind of free, like free form, I call it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll probably avoid 4 if I can.
Right, exactly. Absolutely,
But
absolutely. If it's necessary, yeah. You know, I usually say that the vibrato has its own kingdom. There's the hand is completely different. Like I do vibrate with the fourth there, but for instance, I could, but I wouldn't. Again, I would be very low.
getting some flesh on it, yeah.
I'm just basically moving, like
Oh,
this.
you're actually sliding.
Yeah, but I control the
Interesting.
slide. I
Right.
control the slide because with my very thin, small fourth, there's no other way. But this is a professional secret I just disclosed. So people just,
Yeah,
yeah,
everyone.
constantly thought that I have this, good sounding and strong sounding fourth finger vibrato, which I do, but I do it in this very unorthodox way.
Don't
Not
worry,
the,
nobody's watching.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's not really necessary. Yeah, it's really not
Wow.
necessary. That's a good point. I mean, I was taught in Soviet Union.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as, oh, you can do it this way. It was just like my way or highway. And so if you study this way.
Hmm.
It says fourth finger, play fourth finger, even if your hand is completely not
Right.
designed to do this. So it was very refreshing again coming to United States, and here I met several people, wonderful violinists, who proudly called themselves, I'm the three-fingered violinist, and it's exactly the same way it was derogatory in Soviet Union.
Have you heard of the two-finger violinist?
Of course, yeah,
You know Clayton.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
that's
with
amazing.
Tchaikovsky, yeah, absolutely, it's mind-boggling.
Has
But he
anyone
was
here heard of
fantastic,
Clayton?
such a fantastic violinist before. There's some recordings of his on YouTube when he plays with all fingers yet.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it's
So
phenomenal.
I'd like to introduce you to really one of my
I hope this audio is coming through.
Yeah, it is.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. I'd love to hear everyone's excuses now. So, for those that don't know, he had focal dystonia. So he lost the ability to use his third and fourth finger. It's actually quite tragic, and it's an affliction that many people suffer from, and it's kind of not taken seriously in the music world.
I think by now it is.
By now, it's yeah, and he somehow, I mean, that's desire, that's love. He could have just
Absolutely.
quit.
But I tell you, this is also a specific, extreme gift of coordination and
Yeah.
sensitivity of these fingers. Yeah, it is. Because my brother also stopped playing because of focal dystonia. It was the same thing. He was
Mm.
29 years old, it happened. But when he looked at this one, he has extremely great technique, everything he could do. But then when he looked at this, he said, it's out of this world.
Yeah.
Because there are additional things there. That's is mine.
So we
Anyway,
have other questions here. We have good morning from Thailand. Um, how can we play fast with clarity? What a topic.
well, we're trying to do it all our life.
Yeah. What are your kind of go-to things for people who, let's say you have a student that just the coordination isn't there. Maybe they've practiced their Shradik, they have some hand strength. How do you approach kind of achieving clarity and speeding that
Well,
up and maintaining it?
clarity is, yeah, clarity is really, well, clarity could be related to not pressing the string to the fingerboard.
Mm,
Usually, however, I deal with people who already played for many years, so they actually have the opposite problem. If they have this problem, it's like they're not removing fingers from the fingerboard fast enough.
mm,
So that little pop. And so usually it is, I mean, again, in many cases, it's when the finger is not allowed to do the more natural thing, which is this. This is like
uh-huh.
the naturally the fastest thing that we can do. And that I always say, like, if you're very annoyed at somebody and you just sit there and your hand is on the table, like, and you go like, everybody can do this. Okay, when is it going to be over? I mean, so everybody's hand just does it, and not musicians.
Hmm.
So it's already there, it's built in, and we then started using it here. But if people like use this more, or they allow other joints to
Right.
participate, and so possibly that's where a little bit of um, interference will happen. But again, we're talking minute level, so if you do it slowly, it probably will be okay. Everything can be done slowly. But
Mm,
and faster tempo, you start hearing possibly I mean, there are several issues maybe there, so it's hard to tell
yeah.
without looking at the person exactly. But yeah, it's sort of like trying to diagnose a patient without a full description of all the symptoms and not seeing the patient either.
Don't we do
But
that
yeah.
all day? Or at least you see
Yeah,
the patient.
right. So basically, making sure that your fingers work from this joint, like little hammers, and
Hmm.
you can literally do it with your own hand, like that. And, and then,
Yeah, one way I like to think of it is, I've been using this more often, is that it's as if, I think because we have a destination in mind, like we're hitting a fingerboard and that's like a final destination.
Mhm.
I sometimes tell people who have these issues to pretend like there is no destination and the fingerboard just happened to have stopped the finger that was just
Mm,
going to plop somewhere. And so there isn't this end point, which also tends to loosen the thumb up because oppositional force, like if you have an end here that you're kind of anticipating pressing up against the thumb, as opposed to kind of
that's,
throwing the fingers.
yeah, it's a very good image. Because, yeah, then you can go from here, like without your fingers
Yeah, and that's like
naturally.
what
Oh,
you said about
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Then, yeah, it's a very good image. Thank you.
I got it from martial arts because I've seen so many connections to martial arts, in just my practicing and when I teach. Like when they punch through the wood or the block or something, you don't punch the block, you punch what's on the other side of it. Like that's the philosophy, and that's how strength. And the same thing when they have these competitions of like slicing a million layers of things in Japan,
Mhm.
traditional smith, I guess, or no, yeah, something. Um, you see people with incredible strength and they can't slice through the whole thing, and then somebody just has this momentum and they're aiming for the what's beyond the target, sort of. So something I'm thinking about.
Very cool. So the person from Thailand definitely need to look at martial arts and
Yeah,
employ the idea.
um, yeah. I mean, I love. There's some wonderful martial arts from Thailand. Uh, Interesting types of boxing and all kinds of things. Um, Okay, thoughts on Oscar Shumsky's and Gil Shaham's bow holds where their pinky actually sits a little over the bow, almost like a cellist bow grip. Yeah, does it? Maybe. Yeah, I guess I have seen a little bit of this from Gil Shaham. I don't know about Shumsky. Maybe the
I
fingers were so fat.
really, I never even looked. I Shumsky. I only heard his recordings without looking at him.
I've
And
never seen it on Shumsky, that he actually goes over. Perlman does it. Perlman
yes,
definitely does it.
I think. You know what? I guess I wasn't very observant about those people. Um, okay, number one thing I would say, if it works, great. You know, if it
Right.
works, so for most people, uh, again, if I'm playing with the tilt, my pinky is always behind, slightly behind the other fingers. If I analyze where exactly it is, it's a bit behind because of the tilt of the bow.
Hmm.
I mean, if it's here, then it'll be completely on top if straight here, right? Flat here. But this way, if you're completely on top, it will slide. And maybe that's how it happens to them because they actually, I don't know. I
Mm.
mean, I put my slightly behind so that it stays there because I don't like it to slide behind. But you know what? When I do, for instance, I teach the looseness.
Hmm.
I a lot of times go to overdoing it and actually being able to do this.
Right.
I just would not want to lift this way. Although
Yes.
again, there's exercise I give that I lift this way, like this,
Mm.
and then
Interesting.
yeah. So it's like the bow should go actually the principles of exercise is like this. The bow. I'm checking what's behind it. That the bow will go as fast as if it's flying out of your hand. So you lifting the bow is not off here, but just along the string. So
Yeah.
and it's just completely along the string. Yeah. Exactly.
Hmm.
And then it doesn't really matter. I mean, my mom was giving me this exercise. I think she wanted me to get to the frog when I was very little. That's what this was for. And it has to sound good. If it doesn't sound good, it means that ratio is not great. If it sounds
Hmm.
good,
Hmm.
then you're in the right place. But then she would usually say, like, put the bow here and then get yourself very close to the bow. So she was trying to adjust me from
Mm.
here to this. But I started doing this with my students, putting the bow close to the bridge and just going very slowly. And at some point, you will feel that the hand just restores itself, usually by the
I mean, are
hand.
you actually like almost holding it like this or not quite?
I'm not holding it all. I mean, it basically is on my thumb here. You see, like this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it just kind of that's what it is. And so then I start moving. Yeah,
Right.
but if I move slowly, and right now it's slid to the bridge, so the sound is not important here. Yeah, it's mainly allowing the
Uh-huh.
hand to recuperate into the comfortable position. That's all. It's not a part of the exercise. A part of exercise is actually to lose control and to know that the ball will not go anywhere.
Hmm. Oh,
Just
it's
still.
a sort of
So
trust, a trusting
it's a
and like a
trust.
throwing and
Exactly.
not
Exactly. And
micro
then
like controlling.
correct. And then second part of the same exercise to do the same thing. So not like it's very fast, so you kind of don't feel it exactly at first, but then you start feeling it doing the same. And now I
Mm.
caught it by the end, but I did not hold it all the way through. It's like I did let go, and then I caught it by the end. If not allowing the bow to go that far, if it goes
Hmm.
too far, it'll slide. If
That's
it doesn't
probably
go
easier to do on the E string to start, right?
I usually don't do it at full weight like that on D or A, not at full weight, but at A. E is dangerous that you can run into here, unless of course
Oh
you have a
yeah, we have
protection.
problems.
I mean, that's the only thing why I wouldn't do it on E. But yeah, you're probably right. I mean, weight-wise,
Just because it's vertical.
definitely that E would have been easier. But I also do this in the air, like
Hmm. Hmm.
shooting completely up.
Yeah, so I guess that probably is a very nice segue into working on or diagnosing Collet problems. We're not going to get into Collet, but the idea of like this stroke where you do retain some looseness here,
Yeah, but in Collet, yeah,
if you could call
yes,
that Collet,
true
whatever they
Collet
call it.
like this, yes, that's great. No, but there is more actually you grab, you hold with the fingers, you catch with all fingers and you hold. With this one, it's only pinky. It's only pinky because it's completely the frog. So it's only like in the second part of my exercise. First one, nothing
Mm-hmm.
actually hold. And when you catch it with the pinky, it's really isn't a pinky, so it becomes this. With Calais, it's all fingers, or
Right, right, right.
yeah, all of them are participating to some extent, and they should,
Mm-hmm.
and they should. A bit different.
Good stuff. Favorite modern Sibelius recording? Air Sons asks.
Favorite modern Sibelius
Here,
recordings.
I'll play some weight music for you.
You know, that's good coordination right there. I don't really know. I'm quite disillusioned in so many people playing. Oh, I have a pet peeve with Sibelius, especially. My
It's a weird
teacher,
one.
Mr. Rodney, he worked with Sibelius.
Mm.
So he knew Sibelius. He had been to his house. Sibelius talked to him about his concerto and all that. So there are so many interesting ways to play it, which is completely not what Sibelius envisioned or what's written in the score.
Mm.
And I'm a stickler to the score. I like it when people are individual, but they go through that so that they really truly integrate, hopefully, what the composers wrote
Yeah.
and and their own sense of it. And it's true that sometimes, yeah, sometimes we should have to break even like the dynamic. Let's say you can play something forte when it's a mezzo forte maybe, but with Sibelius, the more I listen to contemporary Sibelius, the more this weird thing came around. Probably, some 25 years ago, somebody very famous, I'm sure, some very famous masterclass, when they started teaching Sibelius as it's frozen in the beginning because, it was Finland, and in Finland everything is frozen. No,
Yeah,
he
no
didn't.
power of suggestion there. Very literal.
No, I mean, it says there mezzo forte and espressivo, dolce and espressivo, mezzo
Espressivo.
forte. Yeah, mezzo forte says exactly. Mezzo forte is on violin part, but I heard in these master classes and people play like that pianissimo, no vibrato. That's a very nice espressivo, nice.
Well,
Being
Mutter, I think Mutter was one of the big popularizers of, because she's sends a vib all the way until.
Is that what she did? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
it's
didn't hear her with that. I
she's
mean, I remember Mutter I heard actually in live
yeah,
with Beethoven and Brahms. She
a lot
came
of
to Moscow.
vibrato there.
Yeah, and her vibrato is great. I give Mutter a lot of times to people whose vibrato I need to warm up, to that they would listen to her vibrato.
Hmm.
But in terms of Sibelius, there's just a lot of misreading of the score. People, I think, relying on other performances
Yeah.
already or with their teachers, and therefore it's not Sibelius anymore.
So, do you think, in general, let's say, recordings from the early or mid 20th century, on average,
True,
are they
true, true.
following the score more than what you hear these days?
Again, depends who that was.
Hmm.
I mean, Heifetz disregarded a lot of things and played everything, 1.5 times faster, pretty
Well,
much.
apparently Sibelius very much liked Heifetz's. I think
He
that's on record
well,
somewhere.
Sibelius, I mean, everybody wanted to be like Heifetz because Heifetz
Right.
was numero uno, and Sibelius wanted to play violin so much. That's understandable. But I
Yeah.
have loved Heifetz when I was little. I mean, I just grew up listening to this too. But
He's still my number one, but not because of the fast tempos. In spite of, actually. Yeah.
yeah. So I can't. I mean, I still love the best. By now that I have discovered the first version, I became the first version of Aficionado, the
Oh
original
God.
version.
Oh
I know,
no.
I love it. I love that cadenza, but only Kavakos can pull it off.
Right.
Only
I
he
remember
does.
his recording of that. It's very.
Yeah, that's the only one. I mean, there are two more recordings on the YouTube now,
Some
and
of those cadenzas, though.
well, the last
Sometimes
one,
being self-conscious can be healthy.
I don't know, but
So
aren't
you
we
like it?
enough self-conscious? It's Bach. It's in the style of Bach. It's a Bach cadenza, but I mean, there's so much of this old-fashioned sentimentality there, which I came to appreciate. You know, you get older, you get wiser. Nothing is bad.
Well, the harmony change in this, all those chords are different in the original. That I actually like. That's kind of,
Yeah,
it's
there's
a little bit
lot.
quirky, but kind of interesting and nice.
Well, I think it's only quirky because we are so
We're used
used
to.
to this other version, you know.
It's true.
But now, you know, I went ahead and I bought it. I have the music now. I have the
Oh, I didn't know you
score.
can buy it.
Yes, just recently I bought it.
Interesting, interesting. Well, we'll look forward to your debut on the original Sibelius. It's a good thing to spend one's time doing. All right, working through it. Asher Burdik asks, I'm an aspiring violin maker. What do you look for in an instrument, and what do you do to test an instrument for tone and playability? Wow. We have a real artist/craftsman in the chat.
Well, for some reason, I don't know what is your experience with this. I hear a lot of violins because my students usually here or there that somebody outgrows their earlier violin or needs to change or whatever, they start testing. So we usually test it against several violins in the whole,
Mm-hmm.
always in the whole, because I want to hear projection. We all want to hear projection. The instrument can project. Sometimes it sounds great in the small area, but it might not carry into the whole. And sometimes it's the other way around. It in the small area sounds like very small sound. You go in the whole, suddenly this violin fills the whole.
Yeah.
You know, and those are really wonderful situations. But anyway, but I noticed, you know, like starting, I guess it's because maybe French models, but no, people take models like Strad models. French did mostly Strad models, didn't they? Like Villaume and others. And meanwhile, the G strings are the ones that suffer most. Usually E is the most brilliant projecting. Almost all good contemporary instruments have very good, powerful E strings.
Mm-hmm.
A could be also good. D is already and G is really bad. Just shallow, kind of doesn't have enough color, doesn't have you know, timbre. Basically, suffers. I don't know why that way. So I always look like my Carl Becker. That's what I was looking. I was looking for. I wanted a contemporary violin. Well, at least we call it contemporary. You know,
Mm-hmm.
1920s still compared to contemporary kind of, because it's healthier.
Right.
Nobody scraped the wood from it under inside, and it wasn't beaten up, and it didn't have cracks. You know. So there are big advantages to contemporary instruments, of course, and this one has a relatively good G string.
Yeah, I think that tracks with my experience. I think if there's a really good, healthy G, a lot can be adjusted and changed, you know, different strings and maybe finding the right place for the sounding post and higher bridge, lower bridge, a lot of things. If there's no power to the G, no robustness, it's very difficult to work around that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, French violins, I find also that they have a directness to them, just generally speaking, even though they're using the same, you know, the same models basically. I think it might have something to do with the different construction methods. From what I understand, the French way is, you know, you have a mold, you build the violin from the outside in, which is much faster, which is why, you know, Villaume, like all the French school, just pumped out violins like a factory relative to what they were doing in Cremona. And in Cremona, it's kind of the tradition is building from the inside out, which in some ways lets the wood develop in ways that the particular piece of wood wants rather than fitting it into a shape. That's what what Andrew explained to me, my violin maker. So it could be related to that, but I'm sure he would have comments on that. But yeah, I think richness, to answer the question, I think we probably agree, richness on the G is primary to just kind of enter the realm of top quality instruments. Like it just has to be. And then ease of play, but like playability, of course. Like I always do like like something where there's very big changes in the length of the string very suddenly, and like can you do that cleanly, or is the instrument struggling to react? Things like that, I think. Yeah.
Wow, that I never even thought about this, but you're right. Because eventually you come across this in the repertoire, of course.
Yeah, you come across it, but I think it also just kind of permeates throughout a lot of things that you play, just the speed of
Yeah.
the instrument to
Response.
react.
Response.
And then probably the shrillness of the E is something I pay attention to. Like if the E is shrill, but that I think can be adjusted.
Some of that can be adjusted, and
Yeah,
some
for
of
sure.
that maybe not. You know, I had a instrument before, the one that I had to go away from because it was Italian instrument. It wasn't any Strad or anything, but it was Italian, and unfortunately, it one of those instruments that really suffered through time. You know, because when it was built, and subsequently over the years, so it was like the old, I think, northern Italy,
Mm.
nameless. I mean, they thought many things as this instrument progressed through the century. Who made it? But we don't really know for sure. So anyway, so they scraped a lot of wood out of that to keep it sounding better
Right.
and bigger. And for years that I played it, quite many years, I had very high bridge because it just wouldn't. It was very beautiful timbre-wise. The G string was to die for.
Mm.
G, D, A, perfect. E was always on the weaker side, of course, because it always built for the lower string. And no
Hmm.
matter who, very good people tried to adjust it and did adjust it, and yeah, and I played on the array of strings. I mean, everything was different. G is one, D is the other, all four different, uh, whatever, different brands of strings. Eventually, it was very cumbersome to do to the process,
Hmm.
but eventually it was caving in just under the
Yeah,
bridge.
that is a
So,
problem when there's
mhm.
too much thinning, and yeah,
So
that's
then I thought, okay, no, another violin will be modern, healthy, that one that will not react to air conditioning.
hmm.
That one could not stand an air conditioning at all. It just will stop sounding and start whistling.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we have a
Anyway,
question from Alex Wilson. He says, I just
okay.
tuned into this, but my question is one I've been meaning to ask for a while. My favorite violinist is David Nadian. What makes his playing special? And can that style ever come back into favor? I love this question. David Nadian's one of my favorite violinists as well. I see him as a sort of combination of Heifetz and Chrysler in many ways. He kind of
Huh.
stylistically.
I don't think I heard enough of him to comment.
I'll send you.
I
I'll
know
have to
that,
send you some links.
please do.
Did you hear
I
his Pas de Deux from Swan Lake as
I did.
concertmaster?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
That I
nice.
did, of course. And yeah, I mean, I heard some, but not as much as I would really know or start comparing. But also, he seems to be a favorite or one of the favorite violinists of my nephew, Mark.
Ah,
He mentioned
yeah.
that.
I mean, he kind of was flying under the radar, I think, and I think through YouTube made a resurgence. I've certainly been propagandizing his name for many years. Um, but yeah, in terms of what makes his playing special, and there's so many things. Obviously, it's hard to break it apart. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I think is one of the main qualities of his playing is um, the relationship of vibrato and articulation, and just how vibrato can be thought of as this thing that you turn on and off, but then it can also be thought of as something related to the hitting of each note. So verse and like to exaggerate. Some people call it parlando of the left hand.
Yeah. Well, in other words, then it would be ability of the hand to start vibrato from the very beginning of the note,
Yeah.
which is, of course, something that is by now it's completely forgotten, even
Mm.
Nobody goes for it. Teachers forget, I think, to teach that. You know, in Russia, it was a big thing. I mean, it was a big no-no. If you cannot start, sorry, I have things clocking here. If you cannot start vibrato right away, you know, like this, yeah. I mean, or soft.
Right.
It's completely well. So your example, I think, is more of landing into vibrato with the left hand, right? But in general, even just with the bow to start the note right
Hmm.
away with,
It's similar, I think.
yeah, it's
Similar
similar,
idea.
but it's just gone
Well,
from
there's
far.
such a. I talked about this with my friend Eric many times, and his theory is that, something we can see many modern violinists doing is kind of waiting, delaying the vibrato, like
Well, it's not golden.
wait, I'm not done. I'm not done.
So, so what I wonder, I wonder, what is your take on why do people do this ugly thing?
Well, obviously, social oral contagion. You hear people do it. You listen to enough Sarah Chang recordings, and things happen. But what Eric said, Eric Silberger, dear friend of mine, fantastic violinist, he thinks, because it bothers him very much, he thinks it's because there's such a focus on accuracy of intonation that the way people practice these days, they really, and maybe rightfully want to hear their intonation. So it's like they want to almost verify. And that becomes a habit of just not
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 doing it right.
vibrating. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's some validity to that, and it's startling to me. So speaking of David Nadian, I mean, he vibrated everything very much Heifetz, Chrysler. Like there's just no notes not vibrated. I think there are times when you can start a note without vibrato, but like very intentionally. One of my favorite string players, Daniel Shafran, just lives in here permanently, rent free. Many notes starting without vibrato, but it's because he wants to just tug at your heart, and it's all happening in the bow and all that stuff. I think there's a distinction.
Oh yes, absolutely. When there is a musical sense to it, when
Yeah,
there's a musical intent, it's very different. We're basically talking about technicality of playing.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
technicality. I was thought at first when it to me, I remember one of my very first recitals I sent to Russia. Maybe not for like maybe after 1 year being here. I one of my recitals I mentioned earlier that I sent to my family back to, and my brother came back to me and said, "Oh yeah, you're playing this very well and this and wow, that's so much better there, da da da." But why do you start vibrato late now? And we're talking about very many years ago. I froze because to us it was anathema. It was this vibrato late, and not that late that you demonstrated. No, I didn't hear that I was starting it late. So I went to listen, and speaking of listening, also was a very good lesson for me. I listened to my own recording from that concert. I don't hear it. I sit
Mm.
in there and I'm just like, okay, no, I have to listen again. I heard the same, like, one phrase probably 10, 12 times. I said, I have to hear it. I have to hear it. But, it took that much effort and suddenly I started hearing it. It was minute. By now, if anybody plays like this, uh, people won't notice that vibrato is late. It will be considered to be perfect start vibrato.
Mm.
But back then, to his ear, it was because he's still there. Like everybody played like that
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Moscow, in Russia, not Moscow, but in Russia. And I already moved to the West. And I know that in my case, you're right. It may be a little bit of that precision of intonation because I remember working on my own intonation a lot here in the States, but also Baroque music.
Uh oh.
Hearing a lot of Baroque music from the radio. It just came on the radio back then on NPR, National Public Radio, and I was listening to it a lot. I didn't like it back then at all.
Like
Now
period performance
hear
style, you mean?
performance.
Okay.
Why? Because they don't vibrate a lot. I mean, and again, they can, but they use a different instrument, different everything, okay?
Yeah.
But that idea of
The banana
showing the
bow.
beauty of the note by this ballooning it,
Yeah.
uh, not necessarily with vibrato at all. A lot of times it's just bow, with no vibrato here, bow.
Hmm.
But the sound is that way, like that way.
Yes.
So then the ear gets used to it, and it allows that certain delay as well, which is also what you said. Yeah, there, listening to Sarah Chang, for instance, not Baroque.
We love
But
you,
yeah.
Sarah.
Well, actually, Sarah Chang played beautifully when she was little.
Let's stop. We have in the chat, David says, ugh, this and portato are my two biggest pet peeves, unless the potato is intentional. And then Kewa says, accidental potatoes. Okay, there's some fun stuff happening. Yeah, that's another one. I mean, let's not make everything about our pet peeves, but let's also not stop while we're on a roll. Yeah, this accidental portato, it's something like there's a stroke that nobody will admit to and there isn't a name for, and it's a big pet peeve of mine. I wouldn't even call it portato because I think portato, I don't see it as a negative thing per se. There's this stroke where the bow speed, it's like talking backwards. Where
I call it, I call it bow reacts to left hand fingers.
bow reacts. I mean, it's like this becomes. It's not even portato, which would be like I could probably make that sound okay.
Yeah, there's a portato definitely, or I call it lure. I for some reason
Lure.
went to the French.
But what
It's the
is?
same.
But this thing, to exaggerate.
Yeah, I really think that it's yeah. I mean, it's really bow reacting because all most beginners, beginner intermediate people, they go through that stage. It's when
Mm.
you play legato, when you play a little bit, always slower tempo, by the way. Nobody does on faster tempo because it was not going to happen. But yeah, it's a slight, I mean, this is already too fast. I'm doing it on purpose, but usually it's like da 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 or da 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 da, the
Hmm.
fastest
Hmm.
probably. It's bow reacting to the vertical movement of the left hand. And so I remember I went through this too. I remember even my mom once telling me, like, okay, just one note in the bow. It was a mantra, one note in the bow. Bow always plays one note, unless you play lure or portato for sure, like really that bowing. But otherwise, just always one note in the bow.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, but what you're demonstrating, I think, it is kind of what's traditionally a portato. Like it's a separate. The bow speed isn't really changing.
I have
Like
to try to make that sound because it's very hard for me to
some people can only do
find
that.
it. Huh?
Some people can only play like that. And like,
Correct.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna name names. I'm not gonna. I'm not
Oh,
gonna.
you mean like big people?
Oh
Big people?
yeah, everybody. No one can play legato. No one can play legato. I mean, this. Mm. Like you hear
Even
actually.
116 notes?
Yeah, I guess if it's slow enough. Or like this. I can't even do it.
Ah, yeah, I see.
Or like this.
Yeah,
It's bow speed. It's not just.
of course, it's
It's
bow speed. Yeah.
insane. It's insane, and they don't hear it.
Well, that is a problem. So
Sorry. I'll
when
calm
I
down.
hear this in my students, we fix it. I don't allow
You're
them to
out
play.
of the class. Bye bye.
No, I'm a nice teacher, I think. I teach.
I did a video on legato, and I actually did analysis of the waveforms. And you hear with someone who's playing real legato, the note changes are just tiny little bumps, and it's pretty even. And with certain people, I mean, the names are in the video. You hear a spike
Yeah.
right before the change of the note.
Yeah, it's just really I remember me considering. I remember. Well, I never got that bad. You know, that I know with some people they are so used to it that I recommend them to play crescendo at the end of each note before it goes to next. So basically not crescendo, but faster bow.
Yeah.
It's faster bow, and then reduce, you know, and get used to sound again. But for me, I never got to that stage. So I just remember here, like separating them.
Mm.
You know, like just separate. So I would play.
Right.
And then just like that, I concentrate here and not there, you know, just make it okay. And then, but I didn't go. It didn't happen that bad for to me.
What's really crazy is sometimes entire ensembles do it together, and it's to me it's just the most because it is really contagion. So many people play like there's an uptick in the magnitude of the note right before the change. And again, I think it's probably this like precision mentality of kind of articulating the next note or something, like not trusting that you can just string the notes together and the bow just thinks it's one. Like there's some trust involved in that. Yeah, anyway. Tyrone Marcel says, "Can you roast my violin playing live? I'm a good sport."
Tell you what?
Roast my violin, like can we critique his violin playing live? He said he's a good sport. Sure. Yeah, maybe next time we do such things. Terrible
Oh, okay.
precedent.
Yeah, with this kind of technology, we can probably do a masterclass that way, right? Do people do it this way? Yeah, I guess they do.
I
Probably.
mean, somebody records themselves with a potato and the other person watches it with a potato and then it's broadcasted to, I think Vengerov, through COVID, he made this big setup at his home with a big screen, and you know he was doing these masterclass things that way, just to have some decent quality through this pathetic medium. But yeah, there is. I think that it would be interesting to have to kind of bring people up. I'll have to figure out how to do that. Bring people up that want to play and just Um, let's see. I mean, there are so many questions here. We're approaching the 2-hour mark, though, so maybe it's time for a wrap up.
How many questions did we leave out or didn't get to? I mean, I feel.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of. It's okay. It's okay. We're all having fun together. Let's see.
There are questions we can answer like quickly, like
Yeah,
one by
let's see. I'm gonna look through. Yeah, discussing Portato and the Dumki trio. Very nice. Roasting masterclass should be only for a fee, Arcenti says. What's the best way to learn the violin in different positions or memorize the fingerboard? I can do a quick riff on this. Positions and memorizing the fingerboard. One thing you can try is playing scales not in the traditional manner, but rather in a single position. And then playing the same key in second position, and then third position, just keeping the same key and moving through positions. I found that was an interesting way to learn. I think there's a Russian, again, method book by Grossman that goes through that. And Albert Markov's book has that as well. And not many others do that, I find.
Yeah, that'd be good. I use a lot of this,
Modes, yeah,
yeah, it's not
sort
even
of.
I don't do modes. I call them finger patterns, because
Yeah,
basically they're all finger patterns. Like here, if you play first position, it will be, this,
tetrachords.
that, and then you go to second position, the same thing. You now have that in the
Right.
beginning, and so on. And so you can, um, as long as you just play enough scales, it's good. But I think, yeah, to vary the scale approach, I
Mm.
think it's a very good thing. And just to stick, if a person by themselves practice, I would stick to some kind of routine, probably that's what you would do, right?
Hmm.
Not haphazardly. Oh, right now I will just do that, but like maybe for a week I will do this way, and then week after, and I have to achieve this and this and this during this week.
Yeah,
Then
not
week
letting
after.
things get stale, I think is so important. Like the goal of the scale isn't so that you can play the scale per se. The scale is a mechanism by which you can, improve your fundamentals. And so it's in your interest to, if something is getting stale or you feel like you can play something decently, to immediately inject some variation. Or I think Galamian does this in his book because he has this section of weird scales, like stuff you'd see in Prokofiev or 20th century music. So he was trying to get at that a bit. Flesh never went there.
I mean, Flash is just
It was back in the day, of course.
back in the
That
day.
predates Prokofiev in the violin works, probably mostly. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up. I wanted to show you something though before we end. I don't know if you're familiar with the violinist Alexander Labko. Here, this is fun. I want to get your reaction to this. It's a fourth finger. Had you heard of him before? Yampolsky student. Yeah, he was a Yampolsky student who kind of defected to Germany.
What again is his name?
Alexander Labko. Labko. Yeah. So he was kind of a very unique fiddler. He played viola d'amore. He did arrangements of he wrote many things.
Oh, that sounds like his arrangement.
Yeah, this is his arrangement as well.
Must be his arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was always having fun.
You know, the name is familiar.
Look
Name
at
is
this.
familiar.
Anyway,
Which year was this from?
so this I think is 2004, 2005, and he lived until lived until 2016, I want to say.
Well, I'm just thinking about his age there. Thinking that Yampolsky student, yeah, Abram Yampolsky, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Because you see, my mom was the one of the very youngest students of his, of Yablonsky's, and he
Hmm.
died. She was only with him for 2 years, and he died in '56. So, and my mom was 76 in 2010. So this guy was there with her. He must have been then being there with her in that class.
Quite possibly, yeah. Oh, great. We have an advertisement from a wonderful.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, it is very unique. Well, I must say, it's very unique.
This is from his younger years.
That's different words, right? It's right. Yes.
Yeah,
It's,
more serious playing. What's that?
I remember that when he's younger, I remember he plays too.
Yeah, maybe there's a better picture here.
Up a little bit to see who the pianist was.
Philip Moll, Moll. I like this part here.
His arrangements are fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, oh, thank you. Thank you for reintroducing.
yeah. He was kind of he never really made a career in Russia, and he became the other orchestra in Berlin, concertmaster,
Ah, I see. Okay.
and
Of course, you will probably record little solo, right?
he's done some things. There's some things on Melodia. He did what's that? Taneyev Suite, the big one. Very, I think it's the best recording. It's just fantastic. But yeah. Anyway. All right.
This note, I guess.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. It's the first time I've done this. I've actually never done live stuff, and Julia does live streams sometimes, and they're really really great.
But
So
it's much more fun. It's much more fun to do together, honestly.
yeah, for
Maybe
sure.
next time we might do it from my channel, and it's like
Yeah,
you will teach me all the stuff, how to
sure.
connect.
Press button, make go.
Press the button.
Yeah, press the button. Yeah. So sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but I think we got through a few of them. And stay in touch, everybody. What else?
And you
Oh,
will have this on your account. I mean, you will have
yes,
it on
yes. It'll be on a video that'll live in infamy. One thing I should mention is Julia's having one of her new ventures on her channel is she has a master class that she's going to run where she's accepting videos from all of you, from anybody. If you go to her channel, you'll see that video, but basically you're accepting videos through email or YouTube, whatever,
Yeah.
and then you will critique them kindly live or in a video. You'll do this in the future. So I think that's a great idea. And so all of you who are interested, head over to her channel and submit your best meditation from Thais.
Only 1 minute. We are
No.
trying at 1 minute, but anyway, it's all
Schoenberg Concerto. What if I learned Schoenberg Concerto and submitted it? Would you give me a fair shot?
1 minute.
1 minute. I'll play the whole thing in a minute. It won't be good. It won't be good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Well,
Thanks,
Daniel,
everyone.
thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Have a good night or morning.